Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're here to take on the big, complex stories and really just pull out the essential insights for you.
And today we are focusing on something massive, a really strategic move, the new free trade agreement between New Zealand and India.
Right.
And for this, we've drawn our analysis from Webfit News, which, is a great independent platform, very community-focused in its reporting.
So our mission today is to take this sprawling, very technical agreement and just explain it in clear, balanced terms, because this is so much more than a document. This comes after some really high-level talks between the prime ministers, and it potentially opens a door to, a market of 1.4 billion consumers?
Exactly. It really sets the stage for a whole new economic relationship. The government's goal here is pretty straightforward. It's classic trade policy. They want to improve market access, support jobs in those export industries, and, build stronger long-term ties. And India has historically been a very, very tough market to crack. High tariffs, lots of complex rules.
Okay, so let's unpack this. It sounds like the whole story of this deal comes down to trade-offs. What New Zealand got straight away versus what it had to sort of agree to wait on.
That's the perfect way to frame it. And to understand the gains, we have to look at the massive shift in market access.
Let's do it.
So let's jump right into the numbers, because this is where the change becomes really tangible. The headline figure is that tariffs are being reduced or removed on around 95% of New Zealand exports to India.
95%. So
Yeah.
just to be clear, that means almost every container we ship there now gets to bypass all that costly red tape that might have killed a smaller deal just last year.
That's it. It's a structural game changer for a lot of businesses.
And I imagine the government's projections reflect that.
They absolutely do. They're estimating export growth could increase by somewhere between 1.1 billion and 1.3 billion New Zealand dollars per year over the next 2 decades.
Wow. And to put that in context, the sources do this great before versus after comparison. So before, you've got high tariffs, your product is less competitive, it's complex, and you have no long-term confidence.
Right.
After, those tariffs are slashed, entry is easier, and businesses can actually start to plan for the long haul.
Exactly. And it's important to get the pacing right. Does everything drop to zero on day one? Not quite. But the immediate hit is still huge.
Okay.
Over half, 57% of current exports will be duty-free from the get-go. And that number climbs to 82% once it's all fully implemented.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting for me, the practical side.
Yeah.
If you're an exporter listening to this, what does this actually mean for your bottom line? I hear horticulture did very well.
Oh. Horticulture is the clear winner in the, let's say, immediate gains column. It's a huge deal for them.
Okay, like what?
Take kiwi fruit. They get duty-free access inside a massive quota. We're talking a quota that's nearly 4 times the current export volumes.
So the grower in the Bay of Plenty is probably pretty happy right now.
I'd say so, yeah. They can expand massively without hitting the non-quota tariffs, which, by the way, are still getting halved.
And it's not just kiwi fruit.
No, apples are right there with them. Their tariff gets halved within a quota that's almost double their recent average exports. And then you have other things, cherries, avocados, blueberries. They'll all become duty-free over the next decade.
And what about Manuka honey? I saw that was a specific win.
A huge specific win. The tariffs there are dropping from this prohibitive 66% all the way down to 16.5% over just 5 years.
Wow.
And, the sources make a really important point here. This is the first time India has ever granted preferential access for honey in any free trade agreement.
So that tells you something.
It tells you a lot. It shows how much of a priority New Zealand placed on its unique, high-value goods.
Okay, so beyond fruit and honey, what else?
There are other key wins. Immediate tariff elimination on sheep meat, on wool, on coal. Seafood like mussels and salmon, they become duty-free over 7 years.
And the big one for premium goods, wine.
Right. Wine tariffs have been, astronomical, up to 150%.
Wow.
Under this deal, they'll fall to between 25 and 50% over 10 years. That suddenly makes high-end New Zealand wine a viable competitor in India, not just a curiosity.
And I saw this clause mentioned, the most favored nation, or MFN, clause. For anyone not familiar with trade jargon, how should we understand that?
Think of it like an ironclad insurance policy. It's really important.
Okay.
It means that if India, down the road, gives a better deal to a country like Australia or the EU, New Zealand automatically gets that same better deal.
So it future-proofs the agreement.
Exactly. You don't have to go back and renegotiate constantly. It locks in the gains and any future improvements.
Let's move beyond goods for a second, to services and investment. I understand there were some broad commitments there, too.
There were, yeah. Especially in those fast-growing sectors like financial services, e-payments, fintech.
And that MFN clause applies there, too.
It does, which is crucial. And on top of that, to really encourage capital flow, the deal sets up a dedicated New Zealand investment desk in India.
And what's the goal with that?
The stated aim is to promote $20 billion in private sector investment over the next 15 years. So this is designed to boost trade in goods and the movement of capital.
Okay, but we can't talk about all the wins without addressing the elephant in the room, the big compromise that's causing all the debate back home: dairy.
Yes, this is absolutely the crucial context. The core tension of the whole agreement is right here.
So just remind us of the scale. How important is dairy to New Zealand?
It's the single most valuable export category. It accounts for about 30% of our total goods exports. We're talking around $24 billion a year. It is the economic heart of the agricultural sector.
And this is exactly why the critics are saying the deal is hard to justify. Because it basically excludes the major dairy products, right? Milk, cheese, butter.
That's correct. India is keeping its high tariff walls up for those core commodities. So for our biggest export earner, there is no immediate big market opening.
Why?
Well, that's the reality of the negotiation. India has millions of small dairy farmers, and protecting that domestic industry is a deeply sensitive political issue for them.
So no progress at all on dairy.
No progress. Supporters would point to some limited targeted wins that they see as a foothold. For example, bulk infant formula and other high-value dairy products will become duty-free over 7 years.
So niche, high-value products get in, but the mass market stuff has to wait.
Precisely. They also got a new 3,000-ton quota for something called milk albumins. But maybe more important than these small gains is the future-proofing.
The same as that MFN clause.
Exactly. India has agreed to consult with New Zealand if it ever offers dairy access to a similar country in the future. So it creates a mechanism to revisit and upgrade the deal later if and when India's position changes.
Okay, let's shift gears completely now, away from goods and tariffs and onto the movement of people, because this is often where these deals have the most direct impact on you, the listener.
Right, and this is another area where the deal is very structured, very controlled. This is not a broad open-door mobility agreement. It's about highly targeted pathways for skilled workers.
Okay, so what does that mean in practice?
It creates a path for up to an average of 1,667 skilled 3-year work visas each year.
And that's for any job?
No, strictly for occupations on New Zealand's green list. So you're talking about doctors, nurses, teachers, IT specialists, engineers.
But I think I saw the sources stress that these visas are non-renewable. That seems like an important detail.
It's a very important detail. That hard limit and the non-renewal clause are the key control mechanisms. It ensures these are temporary positions to fill specific shortages.
Okay, what else?
They also set up a working holiday scheme, much like the one with Australia, for up to 1,000 places a year. And for education, the FTA basically just formalizes the existing rights for Indian students to work part-time and get post-study work visas. It cements that relationship.
Now, we absolutely have to balance this. There's been significant opposition to the deal, and it raises that important question. Did the government get the balance right between what it gave away and what it got?
And we have to report these counter-arguments neutrally. The core objection is exactly that tension we talked about. Opponents say the deal makes major concessions on things like mobility and services, but it didn't deliver the big prize.
Dairy.
So they see it as an unbalanced equation.
And there are also real worries about those mobility parts of the deal, right?
Yes. The concern is that this new visa pathway, plus the work rights for students, could put more pressure on New Zealand's labor market at a time when, unemployment and the cost of living are already big issues for people.
And there's a deeper concern as well, isn't there, about locking things in?
There is. Critics worry that by setting these terms in an international treaty, it might limit the ability of a future government to adjust immigration policy if our economic needs change, that it sort of ties policymakers' hands.
It's important to be clear here, though. The sources say opponents aren't rejecting India as a partner.
Not at all. Their opposition is purely about the structure and the balance of this specific agreement. They're arguing that it doesn't do enough to protect core domestic sectors to justify the concessions.
So what does this all mean? For the everyday New Zealander, beyond the big numbers, There seem to be two competing visions here.
There are. You have the optimist's view and the skeptic's view.
The optimist view being that more export money supports jobs in horticulture, forestry, tech, and that stronger economic ties bring in that $20 billion investment target. It's about creating new, high-value jobs.
Exactly. But the skeptic's view highlights the potential strain on the labor market from the new visas. And it points to the uneven benefits. You know, the kiwi fruit grower is celebrating. The dairy farmer in Waikato, whose main products are excluded, is probably feeling very differently.
So it's that classic debate. Supporters say compromise is the only way into a protected market.
And critics demand more protection for our core industries before signing anything.
And we have to acknowledge what we just don't know yet. This isn't a switch you can just flip and see immediate results.
Not at all. The real impact, how exporters actually use these new rules, how the visa paths affect wages, the actual dollar value of it all, that will only become clear over time as the data comes in.
So those review mechanisms are really important.
They're crucial. This is why supporters frame this deal not as a finished product, but as a foundation. A starting point that's specifically designed to be upgraded later, especially through that one-year review mechanism, which could reopen the door for dairy.
So it's a strategic blueprint, not a final document. It balances these really significant, tangible opportunities against some clear, high-stakes risks, especially around the labor market and dairy. It really does require you to consider both sides.
And if it is a foundation, the question remains, are the immediate risks, like that labor market pressure and the dairy exclusion, acceptable costs for a blueprint you hope to upgrade later?
Which leads us to our final thought for you to think about. Given the absolute importance of the dairy sector to New Zealand's economy, how much does the potential for a future negotiation really matter when you compare it to the immediate, tangible gains being offered right now to sectors like horticulture and services?
That is the core economic and political debate at the heart of this entire agreement.
You can read the full, detailed analysis on this landmark agreement covering all these nuances from Webfit News. Join us next time for another deep dive.